Chapter 2 Mrs. Who. When Meg woke up to the jangling of her alarm clock, the wind was still blowing, but the sun was shining. The worst of the storm was over. She sat up in bed, shaking her head to clear it. It must have been a dream. She'd been frightened by the storm and worried about the tramp, so she just dreamed about going down to the kitchen and seeing Mrs. Whatsit and having her mother get all frightened and upset by that word. What was it? Tess something. She dressed hurriedly, picked up all the kitten still curled up on the bed, and dumped it unceremoniously on the floor. The kitten yawned, stretched, and gave a piteous meow, trotted out of the attic and down the stairs. Meg made her bed and hurried after it. In the kitchen, her mother was making French toast, and the twins were already at the table. The kitten was lapping milk out of a saucer. "Where's Charles?" Meg asked. "Still asleep. We had rather an interrupted night, if you remember." "I hoped it was a dream," Meg said. Her mother carefully turned over 4 slices of French toast, then said in a steady voice, "No, Meg, don't hope it was a dream. I don't remember it any more than you do, but one thing I've learned is that you don't have to understand things for them to be. I'm sorry I showed you I was upset. Your father and I used to have a joke about Tesseract." "What is a tesseract?" Meg asked. "It's a concept." Mrs. Murray handed the twins the syrup. "I'll try to explain it to you later. There isn't time before school." "I don't see why you didn't wake us up," Dennis said. "It's a gip we missed out on all the fun." "You'll be a lot more awake in school today than I will." Meg took her French toast to the table. "Who cares?" Sandy said. "If you're going to let old tramps come into the house in the middle of the night, Mother, you ought to have Den and me around to protect you." "After all, Father would expect us to," Dennis added. "We know you have a great mind and all, Mother," Sandy said, "but you don't have much sense, and certainly Meg and Charles don't." "I know we're morons." Meg was bitter. "I wish you wouldn't be such a dope." "Meg, syrup, please." Sandy reached across the table. "You don't have to take everything so personally. Use a happy medium, for heaven's sake. You just goof around in school and look out the window and don't pay any attention." "You just make things harder for yourself," Dennis said. "And Charles Wallace is going to have an awful time next year when he starts school. We know he's bright, but he's so funny when he's around other people, and they're so used to thinking he's dumb. I don't know what's going to happen to him. Sandy and I will sock anybody who picks on him, but that's about all we can do." "Let's not worry about next year till we get through this one," Mrs. Murray said. "More French toast, boys?" At school, Meg was tired, and her eyelids sagged, and her mind wandered. In social studies, she was asked to name the principal imports and exports of Nicaragua, and though she had looked them up dutifully the evening before, now she could remember none of them. The teacher was sarcastic, the rest of the class laughed, and she flung herself down in her seat in a fury. "Who cares about the imports and exports of Nicaragua, anyhow?" she muttered. "If you're going to be rude, Margaret, you may leave the room," the teacher said. "Okay, I will," Meg flounced out. During study hall, the principal sent for her. "What seems to be the problem now, Meg?" he asked, pleasantly enough. Meg looked sulkily down at the floor. "Nothings, Mr. Jenkins." "Miss Porter tells me you are inexcusably rude." Meg shrugged. "Don't you realize that you just make everything harder for yourself by your attitude?" the principal asked. "Now, Meg, I'm convinced that you can do the work and keep up with your grade if you will apply yourself, but some of your teachers are not. You're going to have to do something about yourself. Nobody can do it for you." Meg was silent. "Well, what about it, Meg?" "I don't know what to do." "You could do your homework for one thing. Wouldn't your mother help you?" "If I asked her to." "Meg, is something troubling you? Are you unhappy at home?" Mr. Jenkins asked. At last Meg looked at him. pushing her glasses in a characteristic gesture. Everything's fine at home. I'm glad to hear it, but I know it must be hard on you to have your father away. Meg eyed the principal wearily and ran her tongue over the barbed line of her braces. Have you had any news from him lately? Meg was sure it was not only imagination that made her feel that behind Mr. Jenkins' surface concern was a gleam of avid curiosity. Wouldn't he like to know? She thought. And if I knew anything, he's the last person I'd tell. Well, one of the last. The postmistress must know that it was almost a year now since the last letter, and heaven knows how many people she'd told, or what unkind guesses she made about the reason for the long silence. Mr. Jenkins waited for an answer, but Meg only shrugged. Just what was your father's line of business? Mr. Jenkins asked. Some kind of scientist, wasn't he? He's a physicist. Meg bared her teeth to reveal the two ferocious lines of braces. Meg, don't you think you'd better make a adjustment to your life if you faced facts? I do face facts, Meg said. They're lots easier to face than people, I can tell you. Then why don't you face facts about your father? You leave my father out of it, Meg shouted. Stop bellowing, Mr. Jenkins said sharply. Do you want the entire school to hear you? So what? Meg demanded. I'm not ashamed of anything I'm saying. Are you? Mr. Jenkins sighed. Do you enjoy being the most belligerent, uncooperative child in school? Meg ignored this. She leaned over the desk toward the principal. Mr. Jenkins, you've met my mother, haven't you? You can't accuse her of not facing facts, can you? She's a scientist. She has a doctor's degree in both biology and bacteriology. Her business is facts. When she tells me that my father isn't coming home, I'll believe it. As long as she says my father is coming home, then I'll believe that. Mr. Jenkins sighed again. No doubt your mother wants to believe that your father is coming home, Meg. Very well. I can't do anything else with you. Go on back to study hall. Try to be a little less antagonistic. Maybe your work would improve if your general attitude were more tractable. When May got home from school, her mother was in the lab. The twins were at Little League, and Charles Wallace, the kitten, the Fortinbras were waiting for her. Fortinbras jumped up, put his front paws on her shoulders, and gave her a kiss. The kitten rushed to his empty saucer and meowed loudly. Come on, Charles Wallace said. Let's go. Where? Meg asked. I'm hungry, Charles. I don't want to go anywhere until I've had something to eat. She was still sore from the interview with Mr. Jenkins, and her voice sounded cross. Charles Wallace looked at her thoughtfully as she went to the refrigerator and gave the kitten some milk, then drank a mugful herself. He handed her a paper bag. Here's a sandwich and some cookies and an apple. I thought we'd better go see Mrs. Whatsit. Oh, golly, Meg said. Why, Charles? You're still uneasy about her, aren't you? Charles asked. Well, yes. Don't be. She's all right. I promise you. She's on our side. How do you know? Meg, he said impatiently. I know. But why should we go see her now? I want to find more about the Tesseract thing. Didn't you see how it upset Mother? You know when Mother can't control the way she feels, when she lets us see she's upset, then it's something big. Meg thought for a moment. Okay, let's go. But let's take Fortinbras with us. Well, of course. He needs the exercise. They set off, Fortinbras rushing ahead, then doubling back to the two children, then leaping off again. The Murrays lived about 4 miles out of the village. Behind the house was a pine woods, and it was through this that Charles Wallace took Meg. Charles, you know she's going to get in awful trouble. Mrs. Whatsit, I mean, if they find out she's broken into the haunted house and taking Mrs. Buncombe's sheets and everything. They could send her to jail. One of the reasons I want to go over this afternoon is to warn them. Them? I told you she was there with her two friends. I'm not even sure if it was Mrs. Whatsit herself who took the sheets, though I wouldn't put it past her. What would she want all those sheets for?" "I intend to ask her," Charles Wallace said, "and to tell them they'd better be more careful. I don't really think they'll let anybody find them, but I just thought we ought to mention the possibility. Sometimes during vacation, some of the boys go out there looking for thrills, but I don't think anybody's apt to right now. What, basketball and everything." They walked in silence. For a moment through the fragrant woods, the rusty pine needles gentle under their feet. Up above them, the wind made music in the branches. Charles Wallace slipped his hand confidently in Meg's, and the sweet little boy gesture warmed her so that she felt the tense knot inside her begin to loosen. Charles loves me at any rate, she thought. "School awful again today?" he asked after a while. "Yes, I got sent to Mr. Jenkins. He made snide remarks about father." Charles Wallace nodded sagely. "I know." "How do you know?" Charles Wallace shook his head. "I can't quite explain. You tell me, that's all. But I never said anything. You just seem to know." "Everything about you tells me," Charles said. "How about the twins?" Meg asked. "Did you know about them, too?" "I suppose I could if I wanted to, if they needed me, but it's a sort of tiring, so I just concentrate on you and Mother." "You mean you read our minds?" Charles Wallace looked troubled. "I don't think it's that. It's being able to understand a sort of language. Like, sometimes if I concentrate very hard, I can understand the wind talking with the trees. You tell me. You see, sort of inadvertently, that's a good word, isn't it? I got Mother to look it up in the dictionary for me this morning. I really must learn to read, except I'm afraid it will make it awfully hard for me in school next year if I already know things. I think it'll be better if people go on thinking I'm not very bright. They won't hate me quite so much." Ahead of them, Fortinbras started barking loudly, the warning bay that usually told them that a car was coming up the road or that someone was at the door.